That wasn't why I was there. No, it was. My sister, one of my sisters has all of her kids up there. Some grandchildren. My sister, great grandchildren, are in just one. Matt came out from Seattle. It was kind of nice because he can't make it for Christmas. And it was so good to have him just have it would grow and can pond and I see all that, but we can spend so much time with
Jake,
Paging Jay Faulkner.
it's time to start.
You never listen to me on Fireball Run either. So.
Hi, Doug. How are you? Did you have a good Thanksgiving? Yeah. That's right.
All right, it is 7 p.m., so we'll start the meeting. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. We'll start with roll call.
Benson.
Here.
Sorda. Here. Gross. Here. Hoffman.
Here.
Minor.
Here.
Mosier.
Here.
Mayor Johnson.
Here.
City Manager Leone.
Here.
City Attorney Denver.
Here. All right, you have before you the minutes of the regular meeting of November 13th, 2018, and the special City Commission meeting of November 5th, 2018. What is your pleasure?
I move approval of the minutes.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Is anyone opposed? Thank you very much. Now we'll move on to the City Manager's report.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor, members of the Commission, and public. Just a couple of things to put before you to know about. Tomorrow at 5:30 there is a visioning strategic planning session with the Yankton School District. That's at 5:30 at the Commons. And I wanted to let the media know that I'm not aware of a quorum that may be present of the Commission, but should there be a quorum, no official Commission business will be discussed, will be part of participating in part of Yankton School District's meeting. Also, the Holiday Festival of Lights is on Thursday, the 29th. So my understanding is that 4 p.m. at the Meridian District, the events and activities the merchants have going will begin. 6 o'clock parade and then 7 o'clock tree lighting ceremony. So make sure that you put that on your calendar.
We should clarify the tree lighting will happen immediately after the parade, so it may be a little before 7.
It may be a little before 7.
People are going to be cold, so we don't want to keep them waiting too long.
Depends upon how long it takes Santa to get down there. Today began early voting for our special election that's scheduled for Tuesday, December 11th. So just a reminder to folks, if they would like to vote early, that can happen at City Hall during regular business hours from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Our special election is again Tuesday, the 11th of December, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Polls will be open. You may vote at Fire Station 2, the North Fire Station, or at City Hall. And a reminder to people who have election campaign signs, yard signs, those need to be in compliance with our city code, and our community development department is happy to walk folks through those regulations if they have questions. We have a little bit of good news today. I received a letter from Governor Dugard in the mail this morning that says, it's my pleasure to award the City of Yankton a $366,500 community development block grant to assist your community in addressing the urgent need created by recent flooding. The boring of a 12-inch water main under Marne Creek and bank stabilization efforts in this area, in the areas impacted by the recent flooding, will ensure the community continues to have access to adequate utilities, adequate and safe utilities, more or less. And he wants to thank the opportunity to commend all the community leaders who've taken an active role in securing the funds, because they're difficult and to secure and funding is limited. So thank you to our city staff and to the city commission for their interest in this opportunity, as well as Planning District 3, who was helpful, as they always are, in helping us securing those funds. So that's a nice bit of good news. We had a little bit of a power situation last week in City Hall, so we're trying to remedy that, fixing that. As you know, long-term next year we have a big rewiring project in City Hall, and that can't come too soon. So if you do come into City Hall, you'll see some workers around and some temporary lighting up, and some of us have been in the dark for a long time. But we are able to make it work, so thanks for everyone's patience on that. I don't believe I have anything else for the commission. However, I'm happy to stand for questions.
Commission, any questions? All right. Thank you, Amy, for that. Next on the agenda is public appearances. This is a time for audience members who wish to address the commission about an item not on tonight's agenda to step to the podium. All right, seeing no one moving towards the podium, we will move on to our consent item agenda. Number 1 is consideration of memorandum 18-240, recommending approval of the application for a pawnbroker's license, and that would be for A1 Pawn and River City Treasures. Number 2 is consideration of memorandum 18-241, recommending approval of the renewal of 8 applications for private collector of refuse licenses for the 2019 licensing period. And number 3 is consideration of memorandum 18-242, recommending approval of the renewal of applications for 2019 city dance licenses, and that would be for 10 Type B licenses and 1 Type A license. Type B is where you go to dance, Type A is where you go to watch other people to dance. What is your pleasure?
I move the consent agenda. Second.
We have a motion and a second for our consent agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you very much. Moving on to old business. Number 1, consideration of memorandum 18-243 and resolution 18-71 for the public hearing on the special assessment roll for removal of noxious vegetation and abatement, and that includes 16 properties totaling $3,743 in assessments. What is your pleasure?
Move the motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion on this item? Would anyone from the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Moser.
Aye.
Benson.
Aye.
Sarda.
Aye.
Gross. Aye. Hoffman.
Aye.
Minor.
Aye.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye. Motion passes. Number 2, under old business, is consideration of memorandum 18-244 regarding the public hearing and consideration of the applications for renewal of alcoholic beverage licenses for the 2019 licensing period. What is your pleasure?
Move the memorandum for
Second.
approving.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion on this item? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Benson.
Aye.
Sarda.
Aye.
Gross.
Aye.
Hoffman.
Aye.
Minor.
Aye.
Moser.
Aye.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye. Motion passes. Number 3, under old business, is a public hearing and second reading of ordinance number 1012 regarding our gas franchise agreement with Mid-American Energy. What is your pleasure?
I'll move the memorandum.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion on this item? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Mark, I believe you would like to say a few things. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. Mark Renders, I'm the franchise manager for Mid-American. I was here a couple weeks ago, I guess, to discuss this. There were a couple of questions at that time, and I know it's an ongoing concern for the community about the availability of natural gas. We did conclude some negotiations to add more natural gas volume here in the Yankton area. It'll be available about a year from now, November of 2019. Basically, it's 1,000 decatherms a day, which is a little more than 1% of the existing capacity here in town. But basically, we've upgraded the town border station, and that allows us to increase our volume into the community. So we are cautiously optimistic that that will help sustain your growth for quite a few years in the future. So I just wanted to share that with you.
It's very good news. Thank you very much. Would anyone else in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Sarda.
Aye.
Gross.
Aye.
Hoffman.
Aye.
Minor.
Aye.
Moser.
Aye.
Benson.
Aye.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye. Motion passes. Moving on to new business. Number 1, consideration of memorandum 18-238 regarding a bid award for crushing concrete and asphalt. And the winning bid is Slowey Construction at $3.84 per ton. What is your pleasure?
Move the memorandum.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion on this item? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Gross. Aye. Hoffman.
Aye.
Minor.
Aye.
Moser.
Aye.
Benson.
Aye.
Sarda.
Aye.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye. Motion passes. Number 2, under new business, is consideration of memorandum 18-239 regarding a personnel contract with Police Chief John Harris. What is your pleasure?
Move the memorandum. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Amy, would you like to give the public an overview of this agreement?
Sure. As you all know, I contacted John back in the summertime to ask if he had some advice for me in looking for someone to help us in the interim. And John volunteered. I won't say he was voluntold. He volunteered and came to visit us. I think his first day was July 3rd or July 4th. And in that short time, a couple things happened. He's won the appreciation and trust of many of the staff and many community members. And I think he also came to realize what a great place Yankton is. And so he was amenable to stay and help a little bit longer. So this contract with John is for a 2-year agreement beginning September 1, 2018, so retroactive to September 1 when we first discussed a more permanent position. We can talk about the terms and specifics if you want, and Ross can chime in as he helped with the negotiation. However, really it outlines the compensation as well as benefits. And because John has retired a number of times, he won't be participating in South Dakota retirement, but there is one change in here that's significant from a regular hire is the city will agree to contribute to a retirement plan for him, so commensurate with the amount that he would get if he was participating in South Dakota retirement. So I'm happy to answer specific questions. I'm sure Chief Harris is as well, or Ross if you have legal questions.
Ross, is there anything you would like to add?
I was just pointed out that there is one errant interim city 3B. I will fix that page. So if you guys make a motion to approve this, make the motion with that correction, please.
Is there any further commission discussion on this item? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? I would just like to say we are very appreciative of John coming to our community and embracing it wholeheartedly, and really making our job much easier when it came to finding a new police chief. We expected a long process, and we got lucky. You answered the call, and it happened to work out so that we could do this on a more permanent basis. And so I just heard nothing but great things about you and your involvement in our police force and our community.
I would like to make one comment, though. Yeah, I would like to make one comment, though. I don't agree with you, Mr. Mayor. I think that I'm the one that got lucky. I came to Yankton with no intention of working full-time, and I really did fall in love with the community and the people here, and you have an outstanding police department, and being able to work with and serve those people really is my goal for the future. So thank you for that opportunity, if you approve this.
Thank you. And with that, I'll ask for roll call.
Excuse me. Do we need to amend the motion before we?
Need to amend the motion. Thanks.
Thank you.
So I would ask to amend 3B to remove the word interim, so it reads to serve as the police chief for the Yankton Police Department.
Second, the amendment.
All right. Now we have a motion and a second. And
Vote on the amendment.
Yes.
Vote on the amendment.
is there any,
2 votes.
yep, is there any commission discussion before we vote on the amendment? All right, then this is a vote on the amendment. Roll call.
Hoffner.
Aye.
Minor.
Aye.
Moser.
Aye.
Benson.
Aye.
Sarda.
Aye.
Gross.
Aye.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye, motion passes. And now we will vote on the agreement itself. Roll call.
Minor.
Aye.
Moser.
Aye.
Benson.
Aye.
Sarda.
Aye.
Gross.
Aye.
Hoffner.
Aye.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye, motion passes. All right, number 3 under new business is a memorandum supporting a first reading of memorandum 18-245, supporting ordinance number 1013, the second supplement to the 2018 annual appropriation ordinance number 1001, in setting December 10th, 2018 for a second reading and public hearing of said ordinance. What is your pleasure?
Introduce.
Thank you very much. Number 4, consideration of memorandum 18-247, approving the recommendation of election workers for the City of Yankton special election on December 11th, 2018, and establishing the compensation for said election workers. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion on this item? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Moser.
Aye.
Benson.
Aye.
Sarda.
Aye.
Gross.
Aye.
Hoffner.
Aye.
Minor.
Aye.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye, motion passes. Number 5 under new business is introduction and first reading of ordinance number 1014, amending the peddler's license, chapter 13, article 3, division 4, and setting December 10th, 2018 for a second reading and public hearing of said ordinance. And again, this is just giving the city manager some administrative leeway to approve peddler's licenses. What is your pleasure?
Introduce.
Thank you. Number 6, consideration of memorandum 18-250 in support of resolution 18-83 regarding an ADA downtown parking designation for Willow Bees. So this would be 2 stalls in front of 114 Douglas Avenue. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion on this item? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Benson.
Aye.
Sarda.
Aye.
Gross.
Aye.
Hoffner.
Aye.
Minor.
Aye.
Moser.
Aye.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye, motion passes. Number 7 under new business is consideration of memorandum 18-249 regarding change order number 1, final project acceptance, and final payment for the West City Limits Road project. And that is for D&G Concrete Construction. The change order adds $27,884 to the project and raises the total cost of the project to $2,326,047. What is your pleasure?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion on this item? Other than relief that this is done and it looks great? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Sarda.
Aye.
Gross.
Aye.
Hoffner.
Aye.
Minor.
Aye.
Mosier.
Aye.
Benson.
Aye.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye, motion passes. Number 8 under new business is consideration of memorandum 18-248 regarding change order number 1, final project acceptance and final payment for the East Highway 50 Trail project. And this change order reduces the price of the project by $5,803. Total project cost is $242,905 to D&G Concrete Construction. What is your pleasure?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion on this item? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Gross.
Aye.
Hoffner.
Aye.
Minor.
Aye.
Mosier.
Aye.
Benson.
Aye.
Sarda.
Aye.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye, motion passes. Number 9, consideration of memorandum 18-251 regarding a development agreement between the City of Yankton and the Yankton Omaha Limited Partnership. What is your pleasure?
I move the memorandum. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Dave, would you like to provide an overview of this agreement?
Sure. I'll speak real briefly about it, and then I'm going to turn it over to Toby Morris for some more detailed explanation maybe, and to be able to answer your questions a little better. But a year ago, about this time, the City Commission approved a tax increment district, which is basically a performance-based tool, set up to be a performance-based tool to help them all help themselves essentially with the development of an outlot or two. It would provide increment that would be available for specific tasks to improve the property that they identified and you approved, essentially facade improvements. That was entirely based on improvements on one or more of the outlets, and as we all know from driving by the site over the last 6 months plus, the improvement of the hotel site did not occur in as timely a manner as we all had hoped. So with that improvement not occurring, the mall then had no source of revenue to really follow through with their facade improvements, so they put that on hold until there'd be a source of increment. We are now recently informed that the hotel financing issues have been resolved and that project will start up again and create that source of funding for the facade improvements. This agreement doesn't amend the tax increment district. That stays the same and has the same sunset clauses in dollar amount and also timeline. The agreement simply changes the date that the facade improvements need to be completed to December of 2019. And with that, I'll turn it over to Toby and he can walk you through maybe some of the details that happened that I missed.
Thanks, Mayor, members of the commission. Toby Morris with Doherty and Company. I know we've been down this road before. In fact, I think when we first started out, Dave was parting his hair to the left, and so it's...
It has been a long and winding road.
Very much so, very much so. I think maybe just for some clarification in terms of my role, my role has always been sort of represent the project. I don't work for the developer. I've represented the city for 15 years now. So trying to get it across the finish line, we had a lot of bumps, and some of those were economic driven. And in particular, what happened last year is what's going on in the construction world is we're seeing inflation go up, and in particular with the hotel side, appraisals have not necessarily followed. And so it wasn't necessarily a a financing issue because my job was to verify that the financing was in place, which it was. The flagship of the Marriott was in place, but when the appraisal came in lower, it sort of put the whole entire financing metrics in a little bit of a tailspin. So since that time, been working closely with the hotel developer, not so much Dial Properties, because it was out of their grasp. They couldn't do anything about it. We had a great plan going forward. We're just a little subject to the economy. Since then, I can now report and say that with the financing of the TIF, which is the most critical part, because you can approve a TIF, but now we have to have the financing in place. I have verified with the bank on my way down here, stopped, had coffee with them, and they're set for a closing essentially once this agreement is signed. So now that that's put in place with the agreement, and there's no changes from last year, the only thing that would have changed is now that we've amended it to say that improvements must be done by December of 19. I have a contract schedule from the contractors that show their plan is to be opening in September of 2019. Everything is in place. I've had discussions with them in terms of how that site should look. Dave and I have been in constant contact, so it is their intention. Everything's in place to get rolling probably once weather permits. I don't know if much can still be done this year, but as soon as spring rolls out, they should have it up more out of the ground, and with the opening of 2019 of August, September. So I would say that's the pre-construction cycle. Obviously bumps can happen in the road, but everything I've done to verify, triple verify, is in place at this time. And so I would gladly take any questions about what's before you or explain any history.
Toby, I have maybe a clarification. Still some confusion out there about the city money, involved in this. Could you explain again in a nutshell? I know Dave has done a good job of it, but there's still people asking about there would be no money from the city going to the mall unless someone would stay at the motel. Is that correct? Spend money at the motel?
Correct. The city is a partner by conduit means only. And so they're not risking any credit. They're not risking any money of their own. Rather, you are a partner and a conduit. So when a tax increment district is established, the hotel pays the taxes. That increment then goes to pay for the facade improvements based on what the developer has submitted within their preliminary plan at this time. So it's a good partnership without the liability.
Thank you.
So the second part of that is the taxes that we generate from hotel stays and the business improvement district revenues that we generate from that. That money will all still come to the city. That's not part of the rebate or the tax increment district. So that money would all still come to the city. The hotel owner is not the recipient of any of the revenues associated with either the tax increment district or the bid district or other taxes.
Our agenda packet said we anticipate an updated version of the illustrations would be available tonight.
We do not have an updated version of the illustration. The one that's in there is what we saw last time, and that's what we're told is going to happen.
The amount is still the same amount. There's going to be some deconstruction of the mall. There's going to be the facade improvements with proposed outlots. The hope is to still have a restaurant pad. They have that land to develop, but anything that does develop out there still has to come before Dave and the approval on that part. And it'll be a partnership going forward with what they do, but they still need to submit the plans to Dave and have him sign off.
The illustration in the packet is a representation of the plan. Every sign and every letter and every angle that's illustrated was never intended to be identical to that. It's not a spec sheet. It's an illustration of what it will look like.
And when would we expect them to begin the facade improvements?
The facade improvement should happen this spring. The general contractor of the hotel will also be doing those improvements to save on mobilization costs.
Is there any more commission discussion? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Dave and Toby, certainly appreciate your efforts to bring this plan to fruition. Like we were saying earlier, it's been a long and winding road, but hopefully in the end it will have been worthwhile. And with that, I'll ask for roll call.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion passes.
Thank you.
Number 10, under new business, is consideration of memorandum 18-252 regarding a naming rights agreement for the proposed aquatics facility. This would result in the facility being named the Huther Family Aquatics Center if it is built. What is your pleasure?
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Amy, would you like to give the public an overview of this agreement?
Sure. As everyone is aware by now, with help from the media, the announcement last week was made regarding the Huther, the Mike, Cindy, and Kylie Huther Family Foundation is contributing in the amount of $1 million to Dive in Yankton for the proposed aquatics facility project. So that's a very generous and exciting offer, and really speaks to, I think, an individual's, a community's purpose and impact on somebody their whole life. So Yankton is a very meaningful place to all of us, but it's also meaningful to the people that grew up here and the people that helped people grow up here. And so I think this contribution is testament to that, and I don't think of there's any more befitting a way to show the gratitude than to enter into an agreement for naming rights to this large donor. Now, I do want to remind the Commission that we do have a naming rights policy and a naming rights committee, and this agreement is in line with our naming rights policy, and our naming rights committee has discussed the terms within the agreement. I also want to make it clear with respect to the Fantle family that this does not change the name of the park itself. This would just be the name of the facility if built. And so we all know that all the donations are contingent upon whether or not the opt-out moves forward or passes. So, of course, if the project does not move forward, the terms of this agreement won't be fulfilled. So the park will remain named Fantle Memorial Park, of course, and this would just be for the aquatics facility. So I'm happy to answer questions, but really what the agreement talks about is how the contribution will be made. It can be made in payments, so it's not necessarily a one-time contribution, although it can be. And many of the pledges, my understanding is Dive in Yankton has agreed to operate that way, so that's not unlike many of the other major pledges that have been contributed. So happy to answer questions or anything that the Commission has, and just say that we're thankful for everyone who's donated, and this is a very generous, I think, contribution and testament to what the community impact the community has well beyond when you're growing up here.
Any Commission discussion? Again, I think this is an example of two Yankton natives, Mike and Cindy, who may no longer have a physical address in Yankton, but certainly their hearts are still in the community, and this donation is another example of that. And this is a much larger donation than Dive in Yankton has received previously, and I think it's worth us considering this naming rights agreement. So, is there anyone in the public that would like to address the Commission on this item? Roll call.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. And with that, there is no other business on tonight's agenda. I would ask for a motion to adjourn into executive session to discuss contractual, litigation, and personnel matters under South Dakota Codified Law 1-25-2.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? This meeting is adjourned into executive session.